You are standing on a ledge of ice, high in a mountain pass, with one hand pressed against the flank of a war elephant that is shaking with terror. The path ahead is barely wider than the animal itself. To your right, a wall of black rock climbs into the clouds. To your left, the ground simply ends, and beyond it is a drop of hundreds of feet into a white nothing. Snow is falling. It is so cold that men are dying where they sit down to rest. Behind you, strung out along miles of frozen trail, is an entire army. Tens of thousands of soldiers, horses, and a handful of these enormous gray beasts, all of them a very long way from home. You are a soldier in the army of Hannibal of Carthage. It is late in the year 218 BC, and you are doing something that everyone in the world believes is impossible. You are bringing an army and elephants over the Alps to attack Rome from the one direction Rome believes it can never be attacked. To understand why anyone would attempt something this insane, you have to understand the hatred behind it. In the 3rd century before Christ, two great powers dominated the Western Mediterranean. One was Rome, a rising republic in Italy. The other was Carthage, a wealthy trading empire based in North Africa, in what is now Tunisia. A generation earlier, the two had fought a long and terrible war, the First Punic War, and Rome had won it, stripping Carthage of the island of Sicily and humiliating it. One of the Carthaginian commanders from that war was a general named Hamilcar Barca, and he never forgave Rome. There is a famous story, passed down by ancient writers, that Hamilcar took his young son to an altar and made the boy swear a solemn oath never to be a friend of Rome. That boy was Hannibal, and he would spend his entire life keeping that promise. How far would a man go to honor a vow made in childhood? Hannibal grew up to become the general of Carthage's armies in Spain, which the Carthaginians had been building into a new power base. And in 219 BC, he lit the fuse. He attacked and captured a Spanish city called Saguntum, which was allied to Rome. Rome demanded that Carthage hand him over. Carthage refused. And so began the Second Punic War, the war that would very nearly destroy Rome. But here is where Hannibal did something no one expected. Rome was the greatest naval and land power in the region, and it fully expected to fight this war in Spain or in Sicily, or to sail an army to Africa and attack Carthage directly. What Rome never imagined, not for a moment, was that the war would come to Italy, because between Hannibal's army in Spain and the Roman heartland stood two of the most formidable natural barriers in the ancient world, the mighty Rhône River, and behind it, the towering, frozen wall of the Alps. Rome believed those mountains were a shield. Hannibal decided to turn them into a door. In the spring of 218 BC, he set out. He marched a huge army out of Spain, with ancient sources claiming numbers as high as 90,000 or 100,000 infantry and thousands of cavalry, though historians treat those figures with caution. Crucially, he also brought 37 war elephants. Now, you may wonder, why elephants? A war elephant in the ancient world was a living tank. Enormous, terrifying, and almost unstoppable in a charge, it could trample infantry, smash through formations, and panic horses that had never smelled anything like it. Soldiers who had never faced one before often broke and ran at the mere sight. Hannibal's elephants were mostly a North African species, smaller than the giant elephants of India or Africa's savanna, but still monsters to a foot soldier. Getting these animals to Italy was a logistical nightmare of the highest order, and the first great test came at the Rhône. The Rhône is a wide, powerful river, and there were hostile Gaulish tribes waiting on the far bank. Hannibal got his infantry and cavalry across in boats and rafts. But how do you get a creature weighing several tons and terrified of water across a fast-flowing river? Hannibal's engineers built enormous rafts, covered them with earth and greenery so they looked like solid ground, and coaxed the elephants onto them. Then they cut the rafts loose and floated the animals across. Some of the elephants panicked and fell into the river, and remarkably, they survived by keeping their trunks above the surface, like snorkels, and walking along the riverbed. Every single elephant made it across. And that was the easy part, because now, looming ahead, was the real obstacle, the Alps. No one had ever brought an army like this over those mountains. The Alps are one of the great mountain ranges of Europe, and in late autumn, with winter closing in, they are a death trap. Snow and ice choke the high passes. The air grows thin. The paths are narrow ledges of loose rock clinging to the sides of sheer cliffs. And they were not empty. They were home to fierce mountain tribes. the Gauls of the high country, who knew every rock and every ambush point, and who looked at this foreign army struggling through their territory and saw not an invasion, but an opportunity for plunder. Hannibal's crossing took around 15 days, and nearly every one of them was a nightmare. Can you imagine leading tens of thousands of men and animals that had never seen snow up into a frozen sky while an unseen enemy watched from above? The attacks came first. As the army wound its way up the narrow valleys, the mountain tribes rolled boulders down onto the column and rushed the strung-out lines of soldiers, cutting men and pack animals off the path and sending them tumbling into the ravines below. On the narrow trails, an army could not form up to fight. It could only endure and press on and bury its dead. Hannibal used every trick he had, seizing high ground at night, using the terrain, negotiating with some tribes and crushing others. But the losses were terrible. And then, higher up, the mountains themselves became the enemy. The temperature plunged. Men from the warm shores of the Mediterranean and North Africa, who had never known real cold, froze to death. The path turned to sheets of ice, where men and horses lost their footing and slid screaming over the edge. Food ran short. The pack animals starved. And through all of it, the elephants had to be coaxed, one agonizing step at a time, along ledges that were never meant for creatures their size. There is one famous episode from the crossing that captures the sheer, grinding difficulty of it. According to the Roman historian Livy, the army came to a place where a landslide had carried away the path entirely, leaving a gap of sheer, impassable rock. The army was trapped, unable to go forward or back, with the elephants and animals starving. So Hannibal's men, the story goes, built huge fires against the rock face to heat the stone, and then poured sour wine, vinegar over it, cracking the superheated rock so it could be broken away with tools, cutting a new path through the mountain itself. Now, historians debate this story. It appears in Livy, but not clearly in our most reliable source, and the chemistry of it is questionable. It may be a legend that grew in the retelling. But whether or not the vinegar was real, the truth it points to is not in doubt. This army had to carve its way through the Alps by brute force and desperate ingenuity, losing men every single day. Is it any wonder the crossing became a legend? There was one more cruelty waiting near the top. When the exhausted army finally reached the summit of the pass, Hannibal is said to have gathered his freezing, demoralized men and pointed down the far side, showing them the green plains of Italy spread out far below, telling them that they were now walking not just into Italy, but into the very heart of Rome's power, and that the worst was behind them. It was a lie of hope. The descent was in many ways worse than the climb. The southern slopes were steeper and slick with fresh snow over old ice, and here the army lost still more men and animals, sliding helplessly off paths that crumbled beneath them. Men who had survived the ambushes and the cold died in the last few miles, so close to the promised land they could see it. When Hannibal's battered army finally staggered down out of the mountains and onto the plains of northern Italy, it was a shadow of what had set out. Of the tens of thousands who had left Spain, our best source, the Greek historian Polybius, tells us that Hannibal descended into Italy with perhaps 20,000 infantry and 6,000 cavalry. He had lost, by some estimates, nearly half his army to the mountains, the cold, and the tribes. His men were exhausted, frostbitten, and starving, and yet, astonishingly, most of the elephants had survived the crossing itself, plodding down onto Italian soil to the amazement of everyone who saw them. Their triumph would be brief. The harsh Italian winter that followed killed nearly all of them, until Hannibal was left with just one, an animal that tradition names Surus, meaning the Syrian, which he is said to have ridden through the marshes of Italy. But the elephants had already served their greatest purpose. They were proof that Hannibal could do what could not be done, a walking symbol of his impossible achievement that struck fear into every enemy and drew wavering allies to his side. Think about what Hannibal had actually done. He had appeared, as if from nowhere, in the one place Rome believed was safe, behind their natural defenses, in their own backyard. The Romans were stunned. And now Hannibal was about to show them why he is still studied in military academies more than 2,000 years later. Because a small, tired army led by a genius can be far more dangerous than a large one led by fools. As Hannibal came down into Italy, he did something clever. Many of the Gaulish tribes of northern Italy hated Rome, which had been conquering them. Hannibal presented himself as their liberator, and many flocked to join him, swelling his ranks with fresh, angry warriors. Then he went to work on the Roman armies sent to destroy him. At a river called the Trebia, in the winter of 218, he lured a Roman army across an icy stream on an empty stomach and sprang a hidden ambush, shattering it. The following year, in 217, he did something even bolder. He hid his entire army in the fog and hills beside a lake called Trasimene, and when the Roman army marched along the shore, unsuspecting, he fell on them from above and drove thousands of them into the water. It was one of the largest ambushes in military history. Rome was reeling. But the worst was still to come. In 216 BC, Rome decided to end the Hannibal problem once and for all. It raised one of the largest armies in its history, by some accounts around 80,000 men, and sent it to crush Hannibal's smaller force in open battle near a town called Cannae. On paper, it was no contest. The Romans had nearly twice the men. And here Hannibal delivered the masterpiece, the battle that is still taught to officers today. He arranged his men in a line that deliberately bulged outward toward the Romans in the center, with his best troops held back on the wings. When the massive Roman force smashed into his center, Hannibal let it slowly give way, drawing the Romans forward, deeper and deeper, as his line bent backward into a crescent. The Romans thought they were winning, pushing through. They did not realize they were walking into a trap. Then Hannibal's powerful cavalry, having swept the Roman horsemen from the field, came crashing into the Roman rear, and his wings swung inward on both sides. In an instant, the enormous Roman army found itself completely surrounded, packed so tightly that men could barely raise their weapons. What followed was not a battle, it was an annihilation. Can you imagine the horror of standing in that crush, shoulder to shoulder with your comrades, and slowly realizing there is no way out? This tactic, letting the enemy push into your center and then wrapping around them from all sides, is called a double envelopment, and Cannae remains its most perfect example ever executed. Tens of thousands of Romans were killed in a single day, in numbers so staggering that they are still debated, perhaps 50,000 or more. It was one of the bloodiest days in the history of warfare, and one of the greatest tactical victories ever won. The road to Rome lay open. Hannibal's mad gamble, the elephants, the mountains, the frozen dead, all of it had led to this moment of total triumph. And here is the great tragic irony of the whole story. Hannibal never took Rome. This is the part that fascinates historians most. After Cannae, one of Hannibal's officers is said to have urged him to march straight on the city, and when Hannibal hesitated, the officer supposedly told him that he knew how to win a victory, but not how to use one. Whether or not those exact words were spoken, they capture the truth. Hannibal did not have the siege equipment, the numbers, or the fresh supplies to take the great walled city of Rome itself. And Rome, even after losing 3 armies and tens of thousands of its sons, simply refused to surrender. It was this refusal, this unbreakable stubbornness, that ultimately defeated him. A Roman general named Fabius adopted a new strategy, refusing to face Hannibal in the open battles he always won, instead shadowing him, harassing him, and wearing him down over years. Hannibal roamed Italy, undefeated in the field, but unable to land the killing blow, his army slowly bleeding away, far from home, with reinforcements from Carthage never quite arriving. In the end, Rome took Hannibal's own strategy and turned it against him. A brilliant young Roman general named Scipio ignored Hannibal in Italy entirely and instead invaded North Africa, striking at Carthage itself. Now it was Carthage that was in mortal danger, and Hannibal, after 15 years in Italy, was recalled home to defend his city. In 202 BC, at a place called Zama, the 2 greatest generals of the age finally met face to face, and this time on open ground, with the Romans having learned how to handle his war elephants and having won over his cavalry. Hannibal lost. The war was over. Carthage was broken forever. Hannibal, the man who had crossed the Alps, spent his final years in exile, hunted by Rome, and eventually took poison rather than be captured. The boy who swore never to be a friend of Rome kept his oath to the very end. So what was it all for? Hannibal crossed the Alps, achieved the impossible, and won some of the most stunning victories in military history, and still he lost the war. But look closer, and you see why his name has outlived almost every general who ever won. He terrified the most powerful state in the ancient world so badly that Roman mothers, for generations afterward, are said to have frightened their children with the phrase, "Hannibal is at the gates." He forced Rome to reinvent the way it fought. His tactics at Cannae are still studied by armies today, the gold standard for how a smaller force can destroy a larger one. We know his story through the accounts of Polybius, who traveled and may even have retraced part of the route himself, and Livy, who told it with all the drama of a legend. And though they disagree on details and the exact pass Hannibal used is argued over to this day, the core of the tale has never been in doubt. One man, with a battered army and a handful of elephants, walked over the roof of the world to bring the greatest empire of the age to its knees. You are standing on a ledge of ice, high in a mountain pass, one hand pressed against the trembling flank of a war elephant, a drop of hundreds of feet a single misstep away. Half the men who started this journey are already gone, frozen or fallen, or cut down in the passes behind you. You do not know that in 2 years' time you will stand on a field called Cannae and watch the largest army Rome has ever raised vanish inside a trap your general has built. You do not know that his name will still be spoken with awe 2,000 years from now, long after the empire you are marching to destroy has itself turned to dust. All you know, on this freezing ledge, is that your general asked you to do the impossible, and that the impossible is exactly what you are doing, one trembling step at a time, over the top of the world.